Hello everybody, this is Anthony Arroyo from the AbletonCookbook.com, and today we're going to cover something that I am calling the unified theory of basslines. And basically, this is just the music theoretical stuff you need to know to make a great bassline. And music theory is actually something that I use a lot when making the bassline. That way, it's kind of better than my old method, which was just sort of like poke around until something sounds good. So I'm going to show you really quickly how I usually make a bassline. I sort of like broke it down and I realized this is what I do for every single song I do. So there's basically two elements to a bassline that you have to think about. The first one is which notes you're going to play. The second one is when you're going to play them. So the basic rule of thumb that you're going to use when making a bassline is the default notes that you're going to want to play are going to be from the triad. And the triad is what we talked about a few posts back, and the triad are the three defining notes of any chord. So I'm going to show you an example right now. So what I have right here is I have a drum rack playing this drum loop, and then I have a chord right here. What this actually is just a G chord, G major chord, and a D major chord. Okay, so if that's the basic chord changes, then we know that all the triad notes from each one of those chords is going to work in that bar. So I basically have a very simple just bassline right here, just playing those triad tones, so you can see they all sound in key at very least, if not interesting. Double click on this so you can see it. So you can see it's just going to be for the G, it's going to be G, B, D, and then B. So it's going dun, 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 and then up to the next note. D rather, and then F sharp, A, and then F sharp again. And that's going to, remember, it's going to change for every time the chord changes. So it's always going to be within that chord change, you're going to want to play those triad tones. So that's the very basic thing. So you're going to want to make sure that you hit, and just as a rule of thumb, I would say hit the root note on the one or the first bass note that you play. As you get a little bit more creative, you can definitely mess around with that. But I definitely think the first note of the bass line should be a note from the triad. You do that, you'll be 99% of the time it's going to sound good. So now you can also add passing notes in between those notes, and that usually can just come from the scale, which we talked about the last post that we talked about for the music theory. So you might want to go back and review that. So here's just that exact same bass line with some passing notes, meaning some notes in between those ones, okay? So and so that's basically all that is just playing the notes up and down the scale, but you're making sure to hit those triad notes on the downbeats. And so basically what you're going to want to make sure you do is that if you're going to hit those triad notes, make sure that you hit them on important beats or beats that you think are important. So that's one way you can have passing notes in between it. And then there's another one which is just chromatic, which means you totally forget about the scale. It doesn't matter about the scale. You're just focusing on the triad and passing between the triads. Instead of using the scale notes, you use any note that is like basically just one half step away from a triad note, and then you just move into the triad. So that doesn't sound quite as good, but what's cool about that is that you can definitely have some bluesier effects if you do that. So the takeaway from which notes to play is triad notes. So there's also another note that you can use, which is called the 7. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but the very basic is you're going to use the triad tones. So if it's a major triad, or it's a major chord, you're going to use the notes from the major triad, and if it's a minor chord, you're going to use the notes from a minor triad, all of which are covered in that other post. So you want to go check those out. What I would say, though, is make sure that you put those triad tones on rhythmically important notes.